You know it. You tell the story. You tell the whole damn world this is Bear territory.
I've got great news for you, Cal fans. The transfer portal has closed. Our football team has some very talented players on the way in, and it's a great day to be a Bear. Welcome to Tell the Whole Damn World, the podcast for Golden Bear fans. If you're like us and are unabashedly and unapologetically all about Cal, you've found the right place. Thanks for joining us. I'm your host, Reza Sirafinejad, and as I always like to say, if you're associated with the University of California, you're one of the luckiest people on this planet. Never forget that. It's April 28th, 2025, and in today's episode, we're going to get to know Robert Paylor, a wonderfully inspiring young man who suffered a devastating spinal injury while competing as a Cal varsity rugby player in the 2017 National Championship. But instead of allowing himself to become a victim, he developed a powerful mindset to overcome that setback and has made it his life's mission to help lift up and encourage others as a highly sought-after inspirational speaker. He's got an absolutely incredible book coming out on May 6th called Paralyzed to Powerful. We can't wait to hear all about it and his love for the Cal community. And in our Cal history segment, we're going to learn all about Glenn T. Seaborg, a Golden Bear who may very well have been the most accomplished and prominent person ever associated with the University of California. But before we get to that, I want to quickly ask for your help. This podcast is entirely a labor of love and a reflection of how much we love our university. Would you be kind enough to take a minute to help tell the whole damn world about us? Share us on your social media and encourage all your Cal fan friends to go to our website, tellthewholedamnworld.com. Speaking on behalf of all of us here, including Ahmad and Leslie, we sincerely appreciate all of you out there. And now, I've got a brief update with what's happening in the world of Cal sports. This Saturday, May 3rd, all eyes will be on Indianapolis to watch the Cal varsity rugby team take on Life University in the national championship. Let's hope our Golden Bears come out victorious and bring another banner back to Witter Rugby Field. In football news, congratulations to Noel Williams, Craig Woodson, Teddy Buchanan, and Marcus Harris for being selected in the NFL draft. That's the first time 4 defensive players have been drafted out of Cal in more than 70 years. The Cal softball team handed number 14 Virginia Tech its first shutout loss of the season, upsetting the Hokies 4-0 in the final game at Levine Fricke Field. The number 4 ranked Cal women's water polo team beat number 2 USC 13-12 to claim 3rd place at the MPSF tournament. And congratulations to the number 10 Cal beach volleyball team. They're going to their 4th straight NCAA tournament and will face Texas in the first round this Friday in Gulf Shores, Alabama. And if you have the means and want to help take the Cal football program to new heights, please consider making a donation to the Fight for California Challenge that will benefit the Cal Football Strategic Opportunity and Excellence Fund. All donations up to $500,000 will be matched, dollar for dollar, by Ron and Stephanie Rivera, head coach Justin Wilcox, and Kevin and Jeanette Kennedy. Okay, up next, we've got Leslie Mitchell with our weekly Cal history segment. And immediately after that, we'll have our interview with Robert Paylor.
This week in Cal history.
Leslie Mitchell, class of 1981, is a third-generation Cal alum and lifelong Golden Bear fan who writes articles about notable people associated with our university. You can visit her website, calbearshistory.com, or follow her on Twitter under Cal Bears History, where she posts stories of interesting students, faculty, and alums. Leslie is an incredible resource when it comes to learning more about people associated with our university who have gone on to do great things in this world. We couldn't be luckier to have her as part of the show. Today, Leslie's going to tell us about a man who has to be considered one of the greatest and most accomplished people to ever be associated with Cal, Glenn T. Seaborg. We just passed his birthday on April 19th. Welcome again to the show, Leslie.
Well, thanks, Reza. I appreciate your kind words as always. Glenn Seaborg, what a guy. Chemistry PhD from Cal, chemistry professor at Cal, chancellor of the university, Nobel Prize winner, has a element on the periodic table named after him. Quite a guy. That's just scratching the surface. And that's all we can obviously do today is just scratch the surface because the guy is so incredibly accomplished.
Right.
One of the things I love about him is that his first language was not English. His parents were immigrants from Sweden, and he grew up speaking Swedish as his first language. His parents moved from Michigan to Southern California when he was a kid, and that's where he grew up mostly. And what I love, too, is that his mother, he was really into literature and reading and all of this kind of stuff. And his mother thought that was impractical. And so she wanted him to be a bookkeeper, which he didn't do after all. It turns out he had a high school teacher. And I want to give a shout out to his high school teacher, a gentleman named White Reed, who was his high school chemistry teacher, who inspired him to study chemistry.
Wow.
And so, hooray for high school teachers and teachers in general. So he went on and went to UCLA. Not everybody's perfect. Got his BA in chemistry there. And for grad school, came on up to Berkeley. In, I believe, 1934, he arrived in Berkeley.
Right. So, like you had said about just kind of scratching the surface, you touched on the fact that he had accomplished so many different things in his storied career. And I've always known the name Glenn T. Seaborg and knew that he was just this incredible individual, but quite honestly, I really didn't know much of the details of everything that he had accomplished. So I'll have to let you kind of take the lead here. Well, as usual there, Leslie, and as we dance and talk about Glenn Seaborg.
He got his PhD, then he stayed in Berkeley to do postdoc work. And what's amazing to me is that's when he really started hitting his stride as a postdoc in like 37, 38, 39. He discovered, ultimately, over a period of years, over 100 isotopes, including, while he was still a postdoc, before he was a professor yet, iodine-131, which is used in nuclear medicine to treat thyroid conditions. And ultimately, this is extraordinary to me, so he discovered iodine-131, which his mother then used in later years because she had a thyroid problem and it prolonged her life by a number of years. So I want to say, Mom, I'm glad he didn't become a bookkeeper after all. But he discovered his work. He and a Cal professor named John Livingood. The two of them co-discovered, as I said, over 100 isotopes that are used in or were used in nuclear medicine. And he's considered a pioneer, among all the other things, of nuclear medicine.
Well, yeah, I think the thing that kind of struck me was just in his entire career, he discovered 10 different elements. Is that right?
Yes, 10 elements on the periodic table. Whether you say discovered or produced, created, synthesized, whatever the word is, because those are all those later elements are not naturally occurring. So they have to be produced in a laboratory by treating some. Don't history major, don't expect. But yes, over 10 elements. He's either a discoverer or co-discoverer accredited, and I actually have them all written down because there was no way I was going to remember them all.
That's okay. I think I got them actually. So Seaborg was the principal or co-discoverer of plutonium, americium, curium, berkelium, californium, einsteinium, fermium, mendelevium, nobelium, and element 106, which, while he was still living, was named Seaborgium in his honor. I thought that was really cool, obviously.
Yes, and I'd like to point out, as my T-shirt says, he did not discover Stanfordium. There is still no Stanfordium.
And part of that, he actually had this to say. He said, that's the greatest honor ever bestowed upon me. Even better, I think, than winning the Nobel Prize. So I thought that was really cool.
Having Seaborgium named after him.
That's right.
He was the first person ever to have an element named after him while he was still alive. So that is a big deal. Absolutely.
No question.
And then he also, in sort of conjunction with discovering all these elements, he also reorganized the periodic table into the format that we have it today, because obviously there was a whole bunch of new elements to add. And I think anybody that's taken a high school chemistry course knows that, there's the big body of elements at the top, and then there's these little couple of lines of additional elements down at the bottom. He's the one that came up with that configuration, separating out the transuranium elements and then deciding how they should interact with each other and what they should be called, and all of that. So the original periodic table was created, I should say, by Dmitry Mendeleev in the 1860s, and then it was revised by Glenn Seaborg. So that's the only major revision to the periodic table, which is something all of us have actually heard of and know what it is, sort of.
Yeah. Yeah.
But after he got his PhD and did his postdoc work at Cal, of course, then came World War II. And he was drafted into the Manhattan Project. So he left Berkeley and went off to University of Chicago for a time to work with the scientists there who were working on the atomic bomb project. One great story about him is his wife, they were engaged at this time, and she was the secretary of Ernest O. Lawrence at the laboratory. And they were going to get married in Chicago. But then they got like halfway through Nevada, and they decided they really wanted to get married now. So they got off the train in this little town called Caliente, Nevada, and they thought, well, we'll just go to the city hall here and get married. But there was no city hall because it was just like a little community, not a city. And they were like stuck because the nearest place where they could get married was 40 miles away. And this is before the age of rental cars. And plus it was a little tiny town and all of that. Turned out one of the sheriff's deputies there had gone to Cal, and Seaborg had been his professor in one of his classes.
What?
And so he arranged for a deputy sheriff's car to take them all the way 40 miles away to whatever this other place was, and get married and then bring them back. So, there's always Cal people everywhere you go.
It shows the value of being part of the Cal community. That's for sure. That's pretty awesome.
Yes. There's bears everywhere.
I wonder if they said a "Go Bears" to each other when they saw each other.
Well, they might well have, because he was a huge sports fan at Cal.
Right.
In fact, throughout the 1950s, he was the faculty representative to the athletic department.
Right.
So yeah, I love, on the one day, on Monday I'll discover plutonium, and on Tuesday I'll talk about the football team.
Well, yeah, and he was a chancellor. He was the second chancellor for the university, right after Clark Kerr.
Correct.
And he served for, it was only maybe a 3-year period as chancellor, but during that time, Cal won the national championship in men's basketball and went to the Rose Bowl in 1959. Right. I mean, how cool is that, right? To be the chancellor and to have those things happen.
And during that time, the old Pacific Coast Conference disintegrated. There was a huge recruiting scandal involving a number of schools, including Cal, but primarily the LA schools. And eventually the whole scandal brought down the whole conference, and then it was resurrected immediately into the Pac-8. And Glenn Seaborg was sufficiently interested in that whole thing that he actually wrote this book called Roses from the Ashes, which was about disintegration and destruction of the Pacific Coast Conference and the creation of the Pac-8. So maybe, he could bring us another West Coast Conference in our near future. Please, Glenn. But yeah, so he was a very serious fan of our athletic programs.
Of the Golden Bears. And if you rearrange the letters in his last name, of course, you get...
Go Bears.
Go Bears.
Yeah, Seaborg is an anagram of Go Bears, or vice versa.
I mean, how cool and how perfect is that, right? That's incredible.
But the reason he left Berkeley after only 3 years as chancellor is he went back to Washington where President Kennedy appointed him as the chairman of the Atomic Energy Commission.
Right.
And he served there under Presidents Kennedy, Johnson, and Nixon for 10 years. And he said one of his most proud achievements was that he helped to negotiate the atmospheric test ban treaty under President Kennedy. Because before that, when the United States and the Soviets wanted to test a nuclear weapon, they just set one off in the atmosphere, and the radiation, of course, then went all over the place. So it was decided maybe that wasn't such a good thing, and they banned atmospheric testing of nuclear weapons. And he was heavily involved in that.
Right. And apparently he advised 10 different U.S. presidents on nuclear policy, from Harry S. Truman to Bill Clinton. I mean, man, that is quite
From the
a
1940s
long list.
to the 1990s. Yes,
Wow.
yes, it is. Well, he knew it. He knew whereof he spoke. He's like, when you're talking to the guy that discovered plutonium, he's kind of the expert on these things.
That's right.
He was very big on trying to limit the military use of nuclear and focus on the energy source and nuclear power and that sort of thing instead.
Right.
In fact, during the Manhattan Project, he was one of a number of people involved in that project that really strongly urged that there be a demonstration test of the bomb to which the Japanese would be invited, so that they could see for themselves, look, we're not kidding. This is a big deal. This is going to be really destructive. But they were shot down. That was not allowed. So unfortunately, didn't happen.
Unfortunately. Underscored. Yeah.
Yes.
Well, some other kind of cool, notable things that I'd read about Glenn Seaborg was that in 1980, up there at LBNL, he transmuted several thousand atoms of bismuth 209 into gold. I mean, that's pretty cool. I mean, that's like the Philosopher's Stone. He figured out how to make gold.
The medieval alchemists would like to have a word with
Right.
him.
Exactly. An asteroid has been named after him. I don't know if you know that, which I thought was kind of cool.
That is.
And then also, just especially since I used to be a double major in astronomy and physics, I love the idea that he helped to found the Berkeley Space Sciences Laboratory up there above Lawrence Hall of Science with Clark Kerr in 1959. I thought that was pretty cool too.
One of my favorite stories about him is when he got the Nobel Prize in 1951, Nobel in chemistry. He shared it with Edwin Macmillan, who is also a Cal professor. And they go to Stockholm for the big ceremony that they always have. And there's a banquet after the ceremony, and the King of Sweden stands up and gives it a big toast and so on and so forth. And he stood up to respond to the king's toast, and he did it in his mother's rural Swedish dialect, which, as in Seaborg's words, was sort of the equivalent of going into the White House and saying, hey, howdy, y'all, how you doing? And apparently it created quite a sensation in the Swedish press. They loved it. I mean, he spoke Swedish, and not only Swedish, but a rural dialect. It was very popular.
That's awesome. Well, then the other thing I think that's just notable is just that he spent most of his life living right next door to Berkeley and Lafayette, and he apparently was an avid hiker. And he and his wife, apparently there's some trail that he originally blazed, a 12-mile hike somewhere out there.
It says he and his wife blazed this trail, and I'm like, wow, I didn't know people actually blazed trails. I thought that was a metaphor. He really did
it. A true trailblazer.
In more ways than one. Yeah, I just am so impressed by people like him. I mean, this incredible, brilliant, genius scientist who did all these amazing things, huge Cal sports fan, chancellor of the university, and then he's out hiking. Like, when do you find time to go out blazing trails as a hiker? I can't even imagine. I can barely, get up in the morning.
A true Renaissance man. I think that was just awesome. And then he has this one quote that I stumbled upon that I thought was really kind of interesting as well. And he said, "There is a beauty in discovery. There is mathematics in music, a kinship of science and poetry in the description of nature. and exquisite form in a molecule. Attempts to place different disciplines in different camps are revealed as artificial in the face of the unity of knowledge. All literate men are sustained by the philosopher, the historian, there you go, Leslie, the political analyst, the economist, the scientist, the poet, the artisan, and the musician. Yeah, I just thought that was pretty.
That's wonderful, because it's something that I feel like it's not appreciated enough. That university isn't just a job training center; it's a place to get knowledge of all kinds.
That's
Even
right.
history majors need to take some science.
That's right.
And physics majors need to know some.
Exactly. Well, hey, Leslie, I don't know. I guess we're going to be talking to some other very prominent people down the road here, but you have set the bar pretty darn high with Glenn Seaborg, I tell you.
Well, I'd say Glenn set the bar. I just follow along in his wake.
But thank you once again. We really appreciate that, Leslie. And I guess we'll see you next week.
Yes, you will. And go Bears.
Go Bears. I don't know about you, but if we were to compile a list of the all-time most prominent people to ever be associated with Cal, Glenn Seaborg would be pretty tough to beat. Sit tight. Let me grab my co-host, Ahmad Anderson, the man who created Bear Territory, and we'll be right back with our interview with Robert Paylor. Resilience. It's a word that gets thrown around a lot these days. As the parent of a 6-year-old, my wife and I are obsessed with reading books about how to raise a resilient child. Everybody wants to be more resilient, and with good reason. As a trait that gauges how effectively you overcome obstacles, it colors nearly every aspect of your life and is considered a key factor in determining your success and happiness in life. And I don't know if I can think of a person more resilient than our next guest. Robert Paylor is a former Cal varsity rugby player who suffered a spinal injury that left him a quadriplegic while playing in the national championship in 2017. And despite how unimaginably devastating you can imagine that may have been, Robert refused to be a victim. As a testament to his unrelenting determination, rather than accepting what doctors told him about not being able to ever use his arms or walk again, he now can stand and walk up to 400 yards. And he has become a very highly sought after, motivational, and inspirational speaker. He recently gave a wonderful TEDx talk on campus, and his book, Paralyzed, Powerful, comes out on May 6th, 8 years to the day when he was injured on the rugby field. Welcome to the show, Robert. We are honored to have you here with us today.
Reza, Ahmad, I'm so excited to be here. Go Bears. This is going to be a lot of fun.
Love it. I love how you sneak that Go Bears in with your TEDx talk and everything. You were still all about the Golden Bears, and we love that.
Let them know. Got to let them know.
All day, baby.
So, hey, I admittedly don't know, where are you from originally, and how did you end up at Cal?
Yeah, over here in the Sacramento Valley. So grew up in a town called El Dorado Hills, and growing up, I mean, it was just hot summers and sports over here in Sacramento. I just remember as early as I can think, like having some kind of ball in my hands, getting outside. Always just like I wanted to be physical. I wanted to be outdoors. It's not. I did play video games and everything once in a while, but that was my focus, and that's what I wanted to do with my life. I remember I started playing football when I was 10, and like my goal was I wanted to be on television when I'm like 10 years old. Like I want to play football in college on TV. And but I loved like the contact of football. I've always like been the biggest guy in my class, so I knew I had a body that I could throw around on the field, and I was doing quite well in that sport. And then I go over to Jesuit High School in Sacramento, which has the #1 rugby program in the country, more national championships than any other rugby team at the high school level in America. I think we're at 10 national championships now, if I'm not mistaken. I show up and I hadn't even heard of the sport of rugby before. It's kind of a niche game. And I think here in Berkeley, we have a very different perspective with such a rich rugby culture at our university. But outside of Berkeley, it can really exist in pockets. Jesuit's one of those pockets. And I come in and I was also playing basketball at the time, but I'm like a measly 6'5". We had another guy who was like 6'10", 6'8" on the grade above us. And like they weren't just bodies, they could ball. So I was thinking, even if I make this basketball team, which I probably would, I think I'm going to kind of ride the pine. And I don't know if I want to sign up for that. I'm looking over here at rugby. They're winning national championships all the time and sending guys over to Cal to play for the #1 collegiate program in the nation. Let me give this a shot. So I take that leap of faith and I just love it. I get MVP my first year playing. We win a national championship that year. And in my junior and senior years, we were #2 in the nation. Real big bummer when you're #2 in the nation, right? And I eventually got my shoulder tapped to go play for UC Berkeley, of course, the most successful collegiate rugby program in America at the time. Oh boy, I think we were at 29 national championships, if I'm not
Wow.
mistaken, when I was being recruited, with the tournament only even being around at that time for about like 40 to 45 years. So just incredible record of success. The team started competing in 1882 as Cal's first varsity sport. And I just felt so lucky to be part of an incredible program at an incredible school. My dreams are just coming together for me.
That's amazing. That's amazing. And so you don't receive any kind of financial support when you are a rugby player at Cal. Is that right?
That's correct. There aren't athletic scholarships to compete for the rugby team, but they do have what's called tags, where they have an allotment of tags that they can give to some of their recruits to help them get into the university, which is, of course, highly competitive. So that would help me, and that helped me get into UC Berkeley, to have that support from the rugby team there. But getting into the rugby program is no joke. I mean, it's highly coveted. There is a recruiting process. It's pretty rare to just kind of like stumble your way in there. Everybody was the MVP on their team. They're all Americans. So very much going from that big fish, small pond to you're thrown into the ocean, and everybody is a really high level competitor.
Man, that's crazy. My stories about rugby are no pads, no helmet. Don't want to do that. I'm good.
That's right.
And I got guys from when I first started Cal. When I got to Cal, guys like Paul Jones, Greg Graceland, guys like that from way back in the day, 1978, 1979, rolling up on the Joe Coopers, the Gary Hines,
Yeah.
Mick Luckhurst being one of them as well, and Don the Wild Man James,
That's
that
DJ.
guy. So I got to ask you. I know what stories I had with those wild boys. What stories can you tell me about you and some of the things that took place playing for Jack Clark? And Jack Clark has been an idol of mine. I hit him on Facebook every now and then, just check in. But I met him when I was a freshman, and he was quite an inspiration to me walking onto the football team and then learning more about him. Man, that size, that kind of motivation, that kind of inspiration, he will put a shade on the sun all day.
you
Share
have
what you can.
You got that right. I remember going in for my recruiting trip to meet him for the first time. And I mean, really, really big moment. I mean, he's the kind of guy where he walks in a room and people get quiet and they pay attention. Right now, as we're speaking, he has 29 national championships competing for UC Berkeley, and hopefully in a couple weeks here we'll knock on number 30 there for that record. And I mean, just like incredible rugby coach, incredible understanding, high performing teams, how to motivate people, lessons in leadership, setting up good cultures. And I think also something that's pretty unique is using the sport of rugby to create good men of character. that certainly their goal is to win a national championship every year. But I think there's a deeper meaning beyond that to create really solid men that are going to make impacts in their communities, in their workplaces, in their families. And I think something that I really take with me from that rugby program is our values. Talking about values like leadership as an ability to make those around you better and more productive, as mental toughness to focus on the next most important thing, values and selflessness, and our motto or mindset rather, which Coach Clark has coined, to be grateful for everything, entitled to nothing. I've taken this with me in my recovery. I take this with me in my career endeavors and my family endeavors. They're things that have helped me immensely. But one story that's really near and dear to me, and is like a side of Coach Clark that a lot of people don't get to see. Because I think, when a lot of people think of Coach, they kind of think, like total operator, really like commanding a room, leading a team. And this story was after I broke my neck, and I'm lying in there in the hospital, and I can't move or feel anything, but I'm totally clear and conscious, just as conscious as I am right now. And my doctor had just told me that I will never walk or move my hands again for the rest of my life. I will be lucky if I can feed myself, if I even survive. And we weren't allowed to have any guests in the room. If I moved my neck at all, I could completely shred any hope I had of a recovery. And I was getting ready to go into what was a potentially life-threatening surgery. And I remember Coach Clark making his way through that room. And I can only imagine that there was a nurse or two who said, "Sir, you can't go in there." But he wouldn't miss it. And we didn't speak a lot. There's not a lot to be said in a moment like that when you're going through that kind of just catastrophic situation. And I talked a little about how I think things had unfolded. But I just remember him at the end of that saying, "I love you, man." And I said it back, and "I love you too, Coach." And just like how much that meant to me, to know that this is so much more than like a player coach relationship. This isn't just about being a really good rugby player and winning national championships. It's something so much deeper than that. And the way that he has supported me through these last 8 years is completely beyond the call of duty. And we wouldn't be having this conversation if it weren't for him. I wouldn't have found this purpose and meaning in my life if it weren't for him continuing to be my coach long after I ever stepped foot on the rugby field. So just incredible person, incredible program. I'm so lucky to just be a part of it.
That is some beautiful stuff there. That's great. And I love how connected you remain with the Cal community.
Mhm.
And I mean, can you express what to you makes Cal such a special place?
It's how much we care about each other. And I think you find that to be most evident in stories like mine and the support that I've received, because people break their necks every day. There are people today who will go through what I went through 8 years ago, and we won't hear about it. And that happens pretty much every day, right? And there's something so unique about this story and the support I've received. And I don't think it's me. I don't think it's because I've worked really hard. I'm just a really great guy. No, I think it's how much we care about each other in this Cal community. Where I was just talking to a very good friend and mentor of mine, Bobby Thompson, who was in the athletic department for some time. And he was telling the story about when he heard the news of my injury, and he went home and he was talking to his mom and shared this news that a rugby player had been paralyzed, and broke his neck. He's paralyzed from the neck down. And he described it as like they lost a little bit of themselves. And at the time, I didn't even really know Bobby. And I think we've kind of been in the same room or stuff like that. But I mean, just hundreds of student athletes that are going through that program. It's hard to know everyone really personally. Now we do. But at the time, I didn't really even know him. And it was almost like internally, it was like a death had happened where you just kind of, you feel like you lost a little bit of yourself. And it's just amazing how I've seen that kind of emotional response from so many people, many of whom I never met, many of whom I will never even meet in my entire life. yet they still continue to show that support for me all the way back then when I needed them most. And in this period of my life now, 8 years later, to continue to show up. I think that's something that's so unique about this Cal community. I just don't see it anywhere else. And that's something that I'm most proud of and grateful for, to be a part of this. That truly, should anyone fall in this community, there's an army of people there to pick you up and keep you moving forward. Cal's just had my back the entire way.
Go Bears, baby. Go Bears. So you talk about that fateful day during the 2017 national championship when you were injured, and you talk about the support that you received from the Cal community and from your coaches, but there must be a lot more to you specifically. How were you able to find the strength to overcome when things felt hopeless?
I think a lot of the ways I was able to find the strength to keep persevering and hear that news that I would never walk or move my hands again. What kept me going was my athlete's mindset. It was like I had been pushing myself as early as I can remember to seek greatness, to push against the odds, to not just be a statistic, but be an outlier in a statistical group. And, on the rugby team, achieving that level of success doesn't just happen. I mean, it's earned year in and year out, day after day, waking up early, doing things that other folks don't want to do. So you're better prepared than them. And I mean, for me to be able to be a starter as a sophomore on that program, which is not an easy or common thing to do, I was putting in lots of extra work. I was setting goals. I'm building a vision, working to achieve that vision and those dreams in my life. And then just because my mission was different now didn't mean that those same tools and principles that helped me to be a successful athlete couldn't help me in battling quadriplegia. So I just look back on the rugby field. I think back to, football or anything growing up. We were never taught to quit. We were never taught to get up. And when you're down and it's deep in the game and you need to dig deep, you do it and you work even harder than you had the entire game. So I found myself here, back on a hospital bed, delivered the worst news I could hear in my entire life. And all I could think about, okay, what can I do? What can I focus on? One of the things that I really drew back on was mental toughness, which I mentioned as one of the values of Cal Rugby, as the ability to focus on the next most important thing. So when we're on the rugby pitch, how that could apply potentially is, ball comes at you, you drop it, falls in front of you, other team gets it. Okay, mistake happened. The mentally weak thing to do in that moment is pound your fist into the sand, just get all upset about that moment, lost in your head and your emotions. Players coming at you, you can't react, and you miss another player, and it continues to compound from there. The mentally tough thing to do is to be able to internalize what happened there, kind of push it to the side, think, what's the next most important thing right now? And then you can react. So bring us back to over in that hospital bed. I couldn't think about, oh my goodness, all these things have changed. What am I going to do? I had to think, am I going to go into a spinal fusion surgery or not? When a doctor comes in and is like, hey, Robert, it's 3 a.m., but we need to pound down on your lungs right now to get the mucus out so that this pneumonia doesn't kill you. It was thinking, I can't quit. I cannot just lay back and sleep right now. I have to fight for my life. I need to focus on the next most important thing. So it's really that foundation that I had built for myself as an athlete that at Cal that helped me to really be able to persevere and make it through these really difficult times early in my injury.
Well, look, as I've shared with you before, and thinking about the things that you've gone through and talking to you, one of the things that sort of resonates for me in the work that I do in human resources and the work that I did specifically in the College of Letters and Science. As you know, I was academic advisor for student athletes, and I was also the other representative under Marsha Westrom, who was an advisor in Letters and Science. And her role was working with the students that were disabled and independent living. And I would like it, and I'd love it if you would share what life was like before and after, because it's less, to me, this is my opinion out there in Bear Territory, it is less about the disability and more of the lack of awareness and empathy that folks have that makes the world less accessible.
Hmm.
And that we need to step up and step in to embrace that, to understand that. Um, and I think the bigger piece for me, and I'll say this, that I heard this recently and somebody shared me, when life gets dingy on your sleeve, as it does for many, as it has for you, folks can either give up and give in. But I was told that if you live long enough, if you fight to live long enough, you will live again.
Mm,
And so, if you would weigh in and lean in on that, Robert, I truly appreciate it. Selfishly, I'd appreciate it. But then
absolutely.
I know you, and I know what this means to you.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you hit it right on the head right there, that addressing the access issues that come with anyone with a disability, the human component is what matters most. That it's not just like legal code that we're looking to be compliant with. It's allowing someone to go back and attend the number one public university in the world, and really be able to experience that sort of collegiate experience like anybody else, to not be held back by physical limitation, especially when you really start looking into it and it's not that crazy. We're not trying to put men on the moon here. We're just trying to get someone back to class and be able
Yes.
to take notes and take tests and be able to participate in this collegiate experience. So man, did I experience that dichotomy of what it was like to be a student at Cal. On one hand, I'm a Division I athlete, getting on my scooter, going from spot to spot, from class to
Yeah.
practice to the
Yeah.
library to Clark Kerr, doing whatever I need to do.
I know that
And
world.
and then fast forward a year after that, I come back and I'm in a wheelchair. And by definition, I'm a quadriplegic.
Yeah.
And I can't go be in the rugby houses and stuff. They were built before ADA code. I'm going like off campus housing and living with roommates who I didn't get to choose and stuff like that. I remember that was not easy for me to come to terms with that at all. And there were a lot of times when I'd be rolling by the HBC and I'd see that long line of scooters that you see right in front of there on Piedmont. And like it hurt. It hurt a lot that I wasn't a part of that anymore
Mhm.
in that way. And just the little things in life can really get to you. I had to do my best to just be like, snap out of that, Robert. Look around you. There was a time when you were in a hospital bed and you would have given anything to be back at this university, anything but my faith, my family, and friends. God's honest truth. Anything else, take it. I just want to be back.
Yeah.
And here I was. So I never let that get it out of control for me. But I did feel a lot of support. I mean, I think a lot of people did lead with their hearts when it came to really helping me get what I needed to have. And little things like I remember they had like curtain rods in my dorm room when I returned to Cal. And all I had to do was speak up, and they put in stuff that I could access with a remote to be able to like move blinds back and forth, stuff like that without my hands. Just like any little detail I just needed to ask. So I think for any folks who are at Cal do have some sort of mobility impairment or any sort of unseen invisible disability that which requires any sort of adaptation, to really just lean in and ask, because our community is filled with amazing people who want to help and they want to support. It just needs to be a little bit of a team effort going in here on really working in how do we address this and how do we make this work as best as possible for the student. And I just think always good for whoever's in that position of leadership and administration to really see the human going through the issue, to really feel it as their own struggle, and take that on with empathy. I think that sort of empathy just really helps bring us all together and solve problems.
Thank you, Rob.
Mhm.
Thank you very much.
I want to talk about your book that's coming out, Paralyzed to Powerful.
Let's
In
go.
this book, can you take us through what your writing process was like? Did you work on it every day, and how long did it take you?
Yeah, this book has been quite a project. So I started kind of like when we were about midway through COVID there, and kind of late 2020. And I had graduated from Cal in 2020. And, I was going into public speaking, and oof, what a great time to launch a public speaking career, right? In COVID. So, anyways, I had a little bit of time on my hands, which was good. I could think about writing this book because, with a lot of the speeches that I give, they're not public, it's private events, stuff like that. And it's not really like a scalable solution to be able to go see everyone and deliver a speech. But this book is, and I got through that. And, it's kind of funny that my co-author, he's a Stanford guy. So you think of like the big peace treaties that have ever existed in this world. This is one of them. Really like bringing together enemies for a common good. And it just we sat down together for about 8 months. Every week we would get on a call and we'd start going through an outline that I had put together and going through these stories, going through these principles to create this first draft. And then from there, a lot of editing, a lot of A/B testing, a lot of just kind of thinking back. And as things have been developing my life very excitingly over these last 4 years since I started writing it, to really be able to continue to add to that material. And it's gotten to where it is today. So this is my journey of battling quadriplegia these last 8 years, going from that day on May 6th of 2017 when I broke my neck and I was told I'd never walk or move my hands again, to everything where I am now, going back to school and graduating and in the hospital, getting back on my feet to where I can now, I'm talking like an Italian here, moving my hands everywhere. And I can walk 400 yards in my walker. So it's part memoir in that regard, but it's also part self-help. Each chapter is a tool that has helped me in overcoming this paralysis. The title Paralyzed to Powerful is not meant to be just this journey of overcoming a physical paralysis of quadriplegia. It's things like anxiety, like judgment, like fear of failure, these mental, emotional forms of paralysis that all of us, me included, face. Each of these tools are things that have helped me in battling quadriplegia that I think can help all of us overcome whatever paralyzes us mentally or emotionally in our lives. So I want to inspire people through this journey and bring them into stories that I have not shared publicly before, all while giving them these key takeaways, really practical tools that they can put into their tool belt to help them overcome whatever might challenge them.
That is absolutely amazing.
Yeah.
I keep thinking about that, and I'm just inspired by you, man. And
Thank you.
one of the things that resonates for me as the son of a minister, and Reza always says, and there's probably a clip out there that people are going to say, Ahmad should be preaching. That's probably now Reza's got in his tool chest there. He's going to put it out there. Just looking at helping others in pain and to choose faith over fear. Um, Talk to us about that because, as I said earlier, life gets dingy on folks' sleeves. And I remember a Broadway play when folks said, when life had become so much for this character, that they said that the rainbow, which should have been hope, was enough to commit suicide. The rainbow was enough to commit suicide. So talk to us about your faith and wrestling through that fear and then becoming a champion, not only for yourself, but a pillar for others.
Yeah, being a champion for others. That's what it all kind of comes down to. That's why I continue to work at this, is not so I can go from point A to point B on my feet. That's not something that keeps you battling for 8 years and will keep me going for the rest of my life. It is a selfless commitment to others that I take what happened to me, which many would think would be the worst thing that could ever happen to me, and I'm going to turn it into a gift. And that's a gift that I can share with others. And so much of it comes from my faith. It's critically important to me. It has served me immensely in this journey. Something that, as we were talking about, that athletes foundation really being important for me, that faith
Yeah.
foundation has been so important for me as well. And I always believed that God had a plan for me and that his plan is good. And I remember when I was sitting on that turf, facing the ground, body absolutely buzzing, numb, motionless from the neck down. I was thinking, how could this possibly be a part of a plan? And if it is a part of a plan, it seems pretty messed up. How can I help others when I can't even help myself?
Yeah.
And I couldn't breathe. I couldn't eat. I lost 60 pounds in 1 month. I was losing 2 pounds a day. I couldn't go to the bathroom. I couldn't itch my nose. I couldn't wipe my own tears when I cried. It seemed like everything was taken away from me. But through that, I had this very patient, steady trust that if I fully commit myself to this and do it not just for myself, and so I can have what I want in my life, but so that I can help others, that's what really kept me pushing forward, where I wasn't so lost in just the trauma and how much things had changed, but really seeing how can something good from this come from this. And it was through sharing the story with others. One of my best friends, Tyler Douglas, his mom set up a GoFundMe campaign to help pay for the rehabilitation expenses that would come my way. I'm sure you can imagine breaking your neck is not a good financial decision. We needed help. And it was through this GoFundMe page that we received tremendous financial support, but also got a lot of mental, emotional support through messages from people in our community, really pouring out their love and their belief to me, really, and some of them confiding in me extreme situations that they were going through and were bringing them down. And I'm talking like stage 4 cancer. I'm talking death of loved ones. I'm talking suicidal ideations. Really, really significant, difficult issues that they're going through. And how my story was helping them. And through my faith and my perseverance, they were having more faith and more perseverance through their challenges. And I could see very clearly how this was being used for good. And in many ways, this injury was a gift. That it wasn't just things being taken away from me, that this injury actually gave me a lot too. And I think what that is the ability to inspire others. This is an ability that I would not have to this degree if I didn't break my neck. So
Gotcha.
it's something that's just it's been this amazing journey. That's not a kind of conclusion or statement I could have said on the day of my injury or really early on. But as time has continued to progress, I've matured in the situation and seen the good that it's doing for others. I've seen how this really has been used for good, that it was not a curse, that it's an absolute gift in my life that I just feel so privileged to be able to share with others.
Well, it strikes me because I think I mentioned to you offline, Robert, that I'd seen some of the interviews that you did early on. Pac-12 Networks did a piece on you, and to see, you were young back then, and obviously hadn't had a lot of experience doing public speaking. And now, when I look at you now, it's almost like I don't recognize you. I mean, you have grown so much,
Yeah.
and you are just so impressive when it comes to public speaking and how you handle yourself and doing these media interviews. I know you've done a bunch of other podcasts as well. And when did you first realize that you'd be pretty good at doing inspirational and public speaking? And can you take us through how that whole journey has evolved for you since you first started?
Yeah, yeah. It started at Cal, funny enough, in public speaking. I had gotten my reps in athletics and speaking, being a team captain, stuff like that, give a pump up speech at halftime, kind of rallying the guys together, debriefs after games, things like that. And I also led religious retreats when I was over at Jesuit high school as well. So that gave me some opportunities to speak in front of crowds. But nothing like this where I was really pouring my heart out for now my presentations are kind of 45 minutes to an hour plus of really trying to captivate an audience for that length of time. But these seeds started getting planted of, Robert, you've got this awesome story, you tell it really well, you should think about sharing this as a public speaker. And that was something where I could kind of like look forward to, have some goals and aspirations while I was working on getting my mobility back early on in my recovery in that first year. And it was while I was doing my rehab in Colorado after my injury that I applied to get into the Haas School of Business, and then my application was accepted for their undergraduate program. And I came back to campus and I was having a coffee with a professor named Solly Folt, who used to work in the athletic department as well. And he is a professor of a sports management class over there, and said, Robert, it's so great to have you back. And you have to talk to my class. You have the great story. And I think what they really need to hear is the takeaways, the things that helped you through this challenge, because you have this very visible challenge. People look at you and, folks can't see it on the screen right now, but I'm in a wheelchair And this is not a prop. This is real. I do not get 1 second of a break from paralysis any day, but everybody's going through something. Most of those challenges you just can't see, but they're still ever significant and ever true. And these tools that have helped me in overcoming quadriplegia, he said, could really help them overcome the challenges they're going through in their lives. So I was like, I'm all in. Let's do this thing. So first text I made was to Coach Clark to get some time together so that we could start talking about my story and how do I apply, at the time, a couple years of battling quadriplegia into some principles that can help them. And I just started kind of like putting some ideas down. We're putting them together and sort of connecting the dots. And then we're able to write about a 20-minute speech was my first speech in this class. And I go over and like I got the full script like on my lap. It's not like memorized like I have it now. And but it was incredible. I mean, they're laughing, they're crying. It's a standing ovation in the end. I'm thinking, when I couldn't play rugby anymore, I lost my purpose. I give that speech. I go back to my dorm room and I'm like, that's it.
Let's
This
go,
is
baby.
it. Like, this is what I want to do the rest of my life. And
Yes.
from there, I was like, I just have to commit myself fully to this. And from there, like, continued to speak in the Cal community and start like slowly branching out from there. Did a couple internships over at Intel and got to present for them as well. Like the same thing, laughing, crying, standing ovation. I can just like see the good that this is doing for others, and was like, I'm going to go full in. So I made that decision when I graduated that I would go into keynote speaking. And I mean, I just haven't looked back ever since. It's been such an incredible purpose. And I can't believe that my job is to just travel around the country and touch hearts and souls and use this injury for extreme good. I'm so lucky to do it.
Man, that's amazing. I mean, like I told you, my dad was a minister. Both my dad and mom were politicians, so I used to hear them speak all the time. And one of my gifts is being able to speak. And I'll say that I was just thinking about being at the Hall of Fame. I think that was probably one of my best speeches, and I felt
Oh yeah, brought
badly.
the house
I
down.
felt badly. That was one of the first times I felt badly with somebody coming behind me because I just revved up and got fired up, and I was like, "Uh-oh!" I was like, and you remember it happened. People were like, "Thank you."
Right.
So, but when it comes from the heart, it's real.
Yeah.
And this next question is the question we ask everybody who's on this show because it comes from the heart. It just radiates within you. And it can be before you got to Cal, it could be after you got to Cal, or many, many, many light years after Cal.
Mm.
What is, and I know there's many with you, baby, what is your bear territory moment?
Yeah. Yeah. Like you said, there's so many I could draw from, but the one I want to talk about today is graduating on my feet. And that was a moment that I thought about for years. It's kind of like it's that carrot on the stick. It's the light at the end of the tunnel. It's like that motivator. And like on those days when I didn't feel like getting up and working out and 5:30 a.m. alarm goes
Woo!
off and we're
Yeah,
rolling down Telegraph and it's cold and there's not a lot of people out. Uh,
nobody.
no, no, to go do my rehab. Like I did it because I so badly wanted to graduate on my feet. And I eventually build up the strength. It's there. It's going to happen. And then COVID hits. And I'm just like, no, you're kidding me. Thank goodness the university did a ceremony in August of 2021 for us 2020 graduates. And
Mhm.
I was thinking, okay, we're going to get it. And it was in the Greek theater too, like in front of everybody. So it was such a cool environment, like 10,000 people packed in there. And I can't think of better folks that I could have with me. It was the person who was in front of me who supported my walker as I stood, and followed right behind me was Coach Billups, who from the rugby team, who did
Mhm.
my rehab with me for 2 years when I returned to Cal. I would not be walking like I am now if it weren't for Coach Billups and his support. And then right behind him was now my wife at the time, my girlfriend Carson Welly,
Yes.
who's also a graduate of Cal. And
Yes.
man, I remember like I'm getting those butterflies,
Yeah.
it's like it's
Yeah.
game day, it's a big moment. And we get over there and, kind of go through our reps. I shoot my legs out, put my right hand on my walker, my right hand on my wheelchair, my left hand on my walker, and they call my name, Robert, Jeffrey, Paylor. And I stand up. Everyone goes berserk, berserk. I mean, everyone's on their feet, screaming, whistling, crying. I take those steps, probably about 10 yards across the stage. I turned to face the crowd. Coach Billups hands me my diploma, and I threw it in the air like as hard as I could, raise it above my head. Just like such a huge moment, seeing all those people cheering for me, and I think it was like a visual representation of all this incredible support I've received over all these years. To see all those faces, really celebrating with me, and that felt so good, and I hope that when they saw me doing that, that part of them saw themselves overcoming their own challenges,
Yeah.
really seeing, like, all the hard work that it took to get there and all the support that I've received to get there, thinking of the work that they could do in their lives and the people who are supporting them in their lives, that when I was taking those steps, they also saw themselves going through the adversities that they face in their lives, and gosh, what an amazing moment. And I go back to that often as one of the moments I'm just most grateful for and was so exciting for me.
Man, it's hard to top that as a Bear Territory moment. I tell you, that's a good one.
Oh,
Pretty
it
cool.
is. I mean, look, that has to be one of the greatest stories that we've heard thus far, my man.
Mm.
Because the first time I ever did Bear Territory was in the Greek Theater,
Oh,
and
wow, that's right.
in front of the entire. That was the first time I did it. In '82 was in front of the student body, and for you to say that was your Bear Territory moment, that's huge, brother.
Yeah, that is. That
That's huge.
is. Yeah, I don't know
Hats
if
off to you, my man. Hats
I don't
off
know
to
if
you,
that's a
brother.
coincidence, to be honest. That's pretty incredible.
That's pretty amazing.
That's what it's all about, Robert. That right there is what it's all about.
Yeah, yeah, it
Without
absolutely is.
question. No, hey, well, Robert, we really could not thank you enough. I mean, you are so truly inspirational, just standing as this model of resilience.
Yes.
And, I talked to you a little bit offline too, this idea of not being a victim. And you actually talk about this a lot in your TEDx talk that you
Mhm.
gave on campus, which I really, really liked and appreciated. And this idea of putting yourself on a mental diet,
Mm.
right? Like that you want to surround yourself with positivity, be selective with the kinds of things that you talk about and that you put into your mind. And if you keep things positive, good things tend to happen. But if you surround yourself with a lot of negativity, and I'll just say this a little bit for all the Cal fans listening and still fretting and worrying about the transfer portal and all this kind of stuff, this nonsense. I mean, come on. It's like if you could just be all negative and stuff, bad things are going to continue to happen. So
Right.
get that out of your mind. Everybody should follow your lead, Robert. And I got to say, I just am so inspired by you. Everybody out there has got to buy your book. Paralyzed to Powerful. Where will they be able to buy it? It is going to be available May 6th. Is that right?
That's right. Available May 6th on the 8-year anniversary of my injury to the day, and available on Barnes & Noble, Amazon. Just search Paralyzed to Powerful, and you'll find it right there. Doing an audiobook as well. That's going to be releasing on May 20th. I narrated it myself. So for those folks who might not have the time or the desire to pick up a book, a great way to throw that on when you're on your commute, doing a workout, whatever it may be, and get some motivation in that mental diet.
That is awesome. That is awesome. We cannot wait to get our hands on a copy of it. Sounds great. So, hey, well, thank you again there, Robert. Appreciate you so much. And go Bears.
Go
Go
Bears.
Bears.
Thank you again to Robert for making the time. I can't say enough about his attitude, resilience, and mindset. He's just wonderfully inspiring. And I want to encourage all of you out there to buy his book, Paralyzed to Powerful, when it comes out on May 6th. As I said at the top of the show, we would greatly appreciate anything you can do to help spread the word about this podcast. Tell all your Cal friends about it. Share us on your social media. Tell people to go to tellthewholedamnworld.com. And you can follow us on X, better known as Twitter, at Win4Cal. That's Win, the number 4, Cal. That's going to do it for this week's episode. We've got a big one next week, so please be sure to join us when we sit down with Athletic Director Jim Knowlton. Thank you for tuning in. We sincerely appreciate all of you out there listening and watching. See you next week. This podcast is about celebrating all things Cal and the prominent people who are passionate about the University of California. Do you feel Cal is the center of the universe? Do you bleed blue and gold? We want you to tell the whole damn world about it. Go Bears!